Pixel 9 Pro Fold is undoubtedly a fun prospect to upgrade to. But for anyone jumping from last year's flagship like the Pixel 8 Pro, it's pretty normal to worry about possibly taking a step back on the camera front. But what do you really lose for all that extra screen, fun, and utility? Just looking at things from a hardware approach, and it's an interesting mix. We have the main sensor, which is found in the Pixel 7a, 8a, and previous Fold, paired with ultra-wide and zoom sensors, which are typically used for selfie shooters in other flagships. With that knowledge, I would generally expect less depth of field, less detail, and worse overall light capture. But that doesn't account for Google's software magic, which really can tip the scales. Starting out with the main sensor in standard mode, and things actually look pretty comparable. Just note that all photos are slightly cropped to better match, and when jumping in, it's all the way to 100%. So we can really pick apart detail we wouldn't otherwise see. I am actually surprised with the level of detail the Fold is able to capture in these shots. While everything isn't nearly as sharp when zoomed in, it is still very respectable. It is rather obvious when it comes to tree foliage here though, and overall sharpness, but a good reminder that when pulling back again, the overall image still looks good. Generally, it feels like the colour temperature of the Fold is slightly warmer than the 8 Pro, which is fine, as I always thought that ran a bit too cool anyway. Once we start snapping with light sources in shot, we do start to see the Fold more likely to introduce lens flares too. No matter the sensor though, just sometimes we get lens flares from both devices. And sometimes the Fold manages to avoid them, while the 8 Pro suffers. The main shooter in the Fold definitely does provide respectable results most of the time though, with maybe a touch less crispness of the 8 Pro, and even surpasses it in some cases with software assistance, like here with some of the text. One feature of the actual Pro phone that can't be matched by the Fold is the ability to capture in full 50 megapixel mode, rather than standard 12 megapixels. And sure, they take a little longer to capture and take up a bit more storage, but they are definitely more detailed than what the Fold manages. Mostly useful if you want to zoom or print. As we shift into lower light, the Fold does know that it needs a bit more software help, as it tends to want to capture with a longer exposure sooner than the 8 Pro. With that though, the performance surprised me, as it remained pretty consistent with its daytime quality, being overall solid with the tendency for lens flares. There is a little more noise, but nothing too drastic here, as long as we stick to 1x zoom. Astrophotography is okay too. Not as good, but okay. An iceberg is the Fold mechanism can act as a tripod at least to help capture those night skies. 2x zoom is what I was really most curious about, as it's likely the zoom level I use most, since Google made it essentially optical quality by cropping in on the sensor. Sadly, from the spec sheet, this isn't available on the Fold. And it's pretty obvious too, with shots lacking detail and sharpness compared to the 8 Pro, where it so often is just a blurry mess when looking closer, especially around foliage. While the limitation is good to be aware of, what's annoying is it often seems better to just zoom in further on a shot taken at 1x than deal with 2x at all. Getting into night shots doesn't help the case for the poor 2x zoom either, with it showing off all its weaknesses while introducing significant noise to dark areas. But at least 5x is more positive, with it performing fairly well. It is still a step down in detail compared to the 8 Pro though, rendering less crisp lines on text and more blobby facial features, but it's not bad on the whole. Night mode mirrors its daytime performance too, which is a nice surprise. Basically, a bit less detail with a little more noise. And then punching into 10x, since this is another level of optical quality claimed by the 8 Pro, but not the Fold. And this might be my biggest surprise, as I feel like the Fold actually does better than the 8 Pro. Even at night, they both seem pretty on par with each other, with the Fold adding that usual bit of extra noise. And then 20x, while niche, still strangely looks better on the Fold. But that's as far as things go, as only the 8 Pro can go to 30x. And then pulling back to the ultra wide, and it's a similar story to the zoom lens, with the performance being comparable, with the 8 Pro boasting slightly better detail, even more so when the Fold seemed like it didn't want to stay focused. And then at night, again, with the Fold having that extra noise with the smaller sensor. The final thing I wanted to compare is the selfie camera, and while I wouldn't usually care about the quality of this one, since one of the magical Fold tricks is taking selfies with the main lens. It should be noted that if you want to take advantage of the Made You Look feature to draw attention of a loved one, it actually captures this with the tiny front selfie camera, and not the main array, to keep eyes from looking off to the side. But the quality of these shots really lack detail and depth, so be careful. Overall, I was surprised that generally the photo quality of the Fold was better than expected, especially considering the age of some of these sensors. Bottom line, if you're a frequent 2x zoomer, probably stop and stick with the 1 or 5x. Otherwise, knowing the limitations of the 9 Pro Fold, it will absolutely be good for 90% of happy snaps, with all the extra screen space for fun.